All right, so give us a little background about yourself.
A little bit of background about me. My dad was military. Like I had told you, I've kind of been all over, so I have a very good understanding of the military life and what that encompasses. I went to my last 2 years of high school here in Texas. I was in the Sletta district. I went to Eastwood. Then I went to UTEP and got my undergraduate degree in English and American Literature, and my minor was secondary ed. I went on to teach for middle school and high school. I taught in the Sled Independent School District. Then I got pregnant with my first child and thought I wanted to stay home, but I was crazy and broke. So I went back to work. Been working in educational publishing and went back to school and got my master's in education. So I held my MED from Abilene Christian. So I have quite a bit of experience when it comes to understanding what a teacher goes through, understanding what it would be like to be a principal. I also hold my certification as a principal. And something really different that I have that I don't believe anybody else does is I'm a certified mediator for educators. So I've been certified through the Mediators Roundtable and also through an educational component. And so I have my certification to mediate for educators. And I know that's been really important when people have been talking about it because they ask questions like, what do I think of the grievance policy? Do I think it could be won or lost on a technicality? That was one specific question we gotten at a forum for the educators. And it was interesting because I think I carry a little bit different of a view on that than what most people do.
So as a mediator for the educators, do you mediate between administration and teachers in a kind of a union capacity, or how does that work?
No, you can mediate even at like a teacher-teacher level because sometimes teachers, when they work together like anybody else, they're going to have disagreements or problems. And it kind of helps you look at both sides, understand what the other person is saying. And so it could be at any level.
Okay.
But starting with teachers.
I see. Tell me about budgets. What kind of experience do you have managing budgets?
My experience with budgets is not as extensive as David Dodge's is. Mine is limited to PTA with treasury stuff with PTA. I was fundraiser with PTA, but I do have a really good understanding. I follow a lot of the stuff that goes on in the legislature. I think I understand where we're going and kind of what's coming down the pike. But I think one thing that's going to make a difference, whether you have experience being a treasurer or working with that large of a sum of money, is listening to what your constituents say and talk to them about what we're going to cut and how we're going to cut it.
Okay, you had mentioned being involved in educational
publishing.
Give me a little bit more detail on what exactly that is.
Well, I started at Scholastic. And in Scholastic, I was an educational consultant. So I would go in, share different products, share different ideas, basically a sales kind of position.
Those are the people that do the book fairs and stuff like that, right?
Actually, no. There's a couple different divisions. It's like the same family, but two different sisters. There was the educational component, what we did, schools and adoptions, like spelling books, reading books, that kind of stuff. And then there's the book fair division, and it's a whole separate one.
Okay.
So I did that for a while. Then I went and I taught an exit review course, and I was an assistant coordinator of field experience over at UTEP. But that was sort of a volunteer job. There wasn't much pay involved, and I really needed a little bit more money. So then I started working with a couple other companies. Now I'm in educational sales and management. Business development manager is what my current title is. I work for a company called Plato Learning. And this question comes up. The district uses Plato Learning, but the state is very clear about what constitutes a conflict. So there's no conflict there really.
Right.
Yeah.
And the state's clear about what their definition of a conflict is, but there's also discussion about the appearance of a conflict. How would your employment be impacted positively or negatively by your potential election to the school board?
I guess I will be able to meet more people that I might not have been able to meet, and this is statewide, not just here at our district. I would refrain from any kind of a vote when it comes to do with Plato. You can abstain from those votes or recuse yourself. I would hate for there to be an appearance of that because I try to be, I feel like I'm an ethical person. And actually, one of the reasons why I think I would be such an asset is because I've seen this whole other side of it, where it's not very ethical, and I can help ensure that doesn't happen on our board.
The state budget, or the state legislature is going to basically slash education in the state of Texas. In what what should we be prepared for, and what would you do as a school board member to help alleviate that situation, or deal with the situation, I should say?
Well, number one, to deal with the situation, I think we have to understand completely what's being cut, how much money we're losing, and how much money we were expecting to lose, because it's been in the plan now that they knew that they were going to lose some money. There was recently a letter that went out to the kind of to the teachers, and the teachers shared it with like there were possibly going to be 1,000 teacher cuts. And basically the district has now come out and said, okay, that's not going to be the case. We're hoping that 280 teachers will be sufficient. So they offered the early retirement package, and then they just did the layoff of like 119 teachers. So I think we have to expect more cuts. But my priority would be to make sure that those cuts, the last place that we make those cuts are in the classroom or with instruction. Because I think that if we don't have teachers, we can't be a school system, and so we need to make sure that we have all the teachers that we need.
EPISD still being in the stages where it's expanding, how is that going to affect brick and mortar projects?
Well, I think with the expansion we're going to get more, well, and this is for sure, it's not a thing, we're going to get more of our WADA money, which is our weighted average daily attendance money. So with attendance, our funds or our revenue go up, so that'll help with that. And they also have in the plans, when they're talking about moving Sunset to Houston, that kind of stuff, ways to save money with that as well.
What do you think about those plans?
You know, I think sometimes some people get upset thinking, oh, I don't want Houston to close. And then they say, okay, well, Houston's not going to close, but it's going to be a different group of kids, and they get upset. And I think that we have to kind of think beyond ourselves. We have to think about our priorities to educate the kids. And if this is a cut that makes sense, we're going to save money instead of having to rebuild Sunset. We have an existing building that works really well. I think it's a good thing. We can't take it all really personally, because our job is to make sure we're providing for those kids. And it's really interesting. People always ask me, well, what's your opinion? What's your opinion? What do you think about this? And sometimes it's not so much that my opinion is important, but it's my ability to listen to what the people are saying about it, and be able to weigh that rationally and evenly, and then go back and vote on behalf of the group.
When you had said you didn't want to see cuts in the classroom, does that include cuts in pay to teachers?
Oh, yeah. I think in a perfect world, we'd love to be able to pay teachers a lot more. I know that that's not a possibility right now. But I do think there's other things that we can do to make sure our teachers know that they're valued, that they're respected, that they know that they're an integral, very important part of what's going on in the classroom.
For example?
For example, how they feel. We need a mood and a climate in the actual school buildings that reflect that respect and that appreciation for our teachers.
Mm-hmm. What do you think about standardized testing?
I think it's a necessary evil. I think that we need to be accountable, but I also think we need to weigh and say, how much time do we want to put into that? Do we need as many benchmark tests as we currently do when we know we have mock tax tests that we're giving? We're also in a state of flux right now, getting ready to go to the EOCs and the STAR. So I think it'll be a really good opportunity for us to look at how we're doing that, look at how much time our students are spending testing, and possibly revamp some of that. We know that we have to do the EOCs and the STARs. That part is a given. But I think we can also look and see how do we balance the instruction that needs to go on in the classroom versus just kind of teaching to the test. There's a whole idea that we can look at our TEKs, which are basically the essential elements or the knowledge pieces that our students are supposed to leave with. And if we have a really good vertical alignment, we know that, say, by the end of 5th grade, this is what our kids need, and by the end of 6th grade, this is what we need. But I think sometimes we think of those TEKs as the maximum, like, oh, that's what we're really shooting for. And I think if we had the attitude or the idea that the TEKs were more of the base level, that's what all of our kids are expected to get, and then we got to teach beyond that, I think the teachers would be happier. I think our students would be much more engaged, because if we're able to teach the TEKs to perfection and allow our kids to move on, then they do a great job.
So what specific policy changes would you implement to make that happen?
Well, I think number one specific policy thing would be looking at our benchmark tests. How many do we need? How much administrative time do we need to set aside for that? I know that a lot goes on in central office when it comes to creating benchmark tests, to scoring benchmark tests, to disaggregating that data. So one of the first things I would like to look at is if we're looking at cutting, making sure that those people that are doing that find something else to do.
What cuts are you looking at? I mean, which ones do you think would make sense? I mean, you had mentioned not wanting to cut in the classroom, so where do you cut?
Well, I think that we look at the programs that we're currently using. I think we look at training options for teachers.
How do training options equate to cuts?
Because sometimes people bring in different trainers for different things, and there are different training models that we can use that would save money using more in-house. Like bring one trainer in and work with all of our trainers instead of for bringing them in to go site to site, which is more expensive. So some of those cuts don't have to be cuts. It's just a limit on what we're spending and how we're spending. Say we're looking at a different program in the schools, and it's something that we already have. Maybe we don't need to update it just yet. Maybe we need to make sure that we're using it to its fullest capacity. So I think sometimes we say cuts, but we're not going to have to cut as much if we could balance what we were doing.
Sure, and everybody talks about efficiency enhancements to try to, cost avoidance versus,
yes.
Some of the other things. But essentially, I mean, at some point, given the amount that we're going to be given less from the state, we're going to have to look at cuts. So let's cut to the bone here. I mean, are you talking about librarians, PE teachers, music programs,
no,
sports,
those are the things
administrators?
If I was having to cut, I would cut administratively. I think two of the most important things that we are missing out, and some people are saying to cut, would be fine arts and sports. Our students perform better in every area if they have fine arts curriculum. Our students are more motivated and more ready to come to school and want to be successful when they're in sports. So I think sports and fine arts would be the last things to cut.
They're also per student, they're also very expensive when they're in sports. I mean, the insurance costs, the uniforms, the transportation, all those other peripheries, I mean, that ends up being a pretty big cost at some point, does it not?
It does, but I think the true cost is, are we here to educate our kids and keep them in school, or do we want to keep more administrators employed? And to me, I think it's more important to have our children be in school and be motivated. Having been a teacher, I know that those kids that are in fine arts and that are in sports are more motivated. They want to be successful. They want to pass so that they can play. When our kids are in fine arts, we're developing and stimulating their brains. I just can't think of a more important thing.
Do you find that people look at cuts in fine arts a lot more palatable than cuts in, say, football, especially in a state like Texas?
Yeah, they do. But I think that they're both equally as important. I think there's an idea of educating the whole child. And the whole child includes our curriculum, of course. We need a solid core curriculum, but that whole child also includes the fine arts, and it includes sports. And when we're talking about sports, it could be extracurricular activities like flag football outside. It could also be the actual sports. But our kids need to be healthy and motivated and engaged. And if they're, have all those other issues, they don't get to pay attention in classrooms.
Tell me what your thoughts are or plans are for integration of technology into the classroom.
Very important. Well, you can look at your job, what you do right now, and you see how important technology is. We also have our TEKs that require technology integrated into the classroom. And it's really funny, our kids, there's a term right now, digital natives. Our kids are wired. And it doesn't matter what socioeconomic level you're at, those kids have cell phones. Those parents know that that's a priority for them. And so I think if we deny them that opportunity in the classroom, we're missing a great opportunity to teach. We also know that one of our goals, or two of our goals as a district, is to make sure our kids are either college ready or workforce ready. And so if they don't have that experience with technology, we're providing a disservice to them because they're not ready for either.
How realistic is the shift to e-books as a cost-saving measure for the district, away from solid textbooks?
I don't know the cost breakdown on how much it would save. I think it would be so much nicer for our kids instead of for lugging around those big giant backpacks. I guess it would depend on how much money the state wants to put behind ebooks and e-education. They come out all the time and say this is where they're going. You see where school boards, they get...
Well, it's a matter of when, not if, at this point.
Yes, I agree. So I think that I think it'll be a great thing. It's just going to depend on how do we get to finance that. Mm-hmm. But I think it would be an asset for the kids. You don't have to worry. I know that the technology will wear down, but you don't have to worry about the books being worn down, the books being torn up. And then also an interesting point when it comes to that is we know that there are addendums to our books that are published all the time when they find errors or they give you an errata sheet. Well, our kids aren't going to hold on to an errata sheet. That'll be lost. But with ebooks or with something like that, that update could be automatic. So where kids are getting the most current information.
Not to mention the health benefits of not lugging around 8 books as opposed to one iPad.
I have 2 middle schoolers, and I swear my daughter's backpack weighs just about as much as she does.
That is a concern. Everybody jumps into excuse me. Everybody jumps into politics for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
Generally, it's something upset them, something bothered them, and got them into the race. What was the stimulus for you to get involved?
The straw that broke my back. Fine arts and sports. I think that my opponent wants to make a statement sometimes more than making a difference in kids' educations. I think it sounds great to come out and say, we're going to cut this, we're going to slash this, we're going to do this. But I think you need to be real methodical in thinking about where are we going to do those cuts, and where will it have the least impact on our kids. So that would be my impetus.
Let me juxtapose your position. So your opponent, and I haven't spoke with your opponent yet, but you're saying that your opponent is in favor of cutting sports and fine arts?
Yeah, he had proposed no 9th grade sports. He had proposed let's not do the Coronado Franklin game, which is actually a moneymaker. He had just turned down a vote to get more instruments for our students. And some of that just makes me laugh. Like, I've been to concerts where our kids have duct taped instruments, and I think our students deserve better than that. I had been toying with the idea and talking to him for quite a while. I knew this was something I wanted to do. I volunteered at all levels. I've been on things like the Children's Grief Center Board. I was over on the board at First Presbyterian. But here in EPISD, I had volunteered at the classroom level with my kids, then kind of moved up the rope with PTA, been fundraising chair, been president. And then at the district level, I'd worked on things like our plan for excellence. And our plan for excellence includes fine arts, it includes dual language instruction, it includes extracurricular activities. And then I'm also on the DEAC committee. And to me, it's the next natural step or progression. But I thought I need to do this now. I think it's such an important time. I think people are very afraid about what's going on. And I think that with cleaner or clearer lines of communications, they wouldn't have to be so afraid. And then when he said the stuff about, we don't need those instruments and we should get rid of 9th grade sports, I thought this is coming from a man who's never been in the classroom and doesn't really understand. There is a study, and it talks about how we lose our kids mentally in middle school and we lose them physically in high school. And the kids that are involved in fine arts and involved in sports, they're not the ones that are dropping out. And so the more we get to offer that to all of our students, the more likely we are to keep our students, the more likely they are to perform better on all of those standardized tests that they have to take. They're better thinkers. I think it's more of a gift to our community to make sure that we have kids that can graduate and can think and can act. I think it's a good thing all the way around.
How do you deal with conflict?
Actually, I guess you'd have to ask my husband. No. I think I deal pretty well with conflict. I don't seek out conflict, but I'm not afraid of conflict. I'm ready to share how I feel about things. But I think I'm also a very good listener. And part of that is through some of those mediation skills that I've learned. I think 9 times out of 10, people who are upset have all of this other peripheral stuff that's going on. And once you kind of get to sort to the root of what the real issue is, I think it's pretty easy to come to a conclusion where both sides can win.
One of the things that's kind of been undiscussed in the public sphere, particularly as it relates to the public corruption scandal that is now, if it were a child, would be in the 1st grade, is the fact that so many school board members were involved in that public corruption scandal. Nobody on earth would say, yes, I'd take money, or yes, I'd take a bribe. But if you're approached by a contractor, you're approached by someone to do something that you find legally questionable, what actions would you take?
You know, I have been in that position before where I've been approached, having been on the vendor side, been approached by administrators and stuff asking for things, and it's number one, it's a very awkward position. But number two, I think lots of times that that simply by saying no or saying, I don't do it that way, it's enough to make them think twice about what they just asked and not do it again. If it was a serious allegation or a serious proposal, I guess I would have to think about, do I need to report this to the officials? Obviously nothing's gone on because I've said no to it, but do I talk to somebody and say, look, this is something that bothers me, this is what I understand to be going on, and I think I need some backup on what do I do and where should I go?
Okay. Final question I have is about a bill that was sponsored by State Representative Marisa Marquez. It's calling for the publication online of campaign finance reports for school board candidates. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on that?
I think more power. I think that it should be transparent. I shouldn't be accepting money that I'm embarrassed to be accepting. I probably didn't say that right. But if I don't feel comfortable saying that you're supporting me, I shouldn't be taking your money. I do think it's a sad thing that money is plays such an important issue. Talking to people about how much will this cost to run this campaign, it's an exorbitant amount. And it's even more exorbitant when you think, okay, this is a completely and totally volunteer position. But I think that we should be publishing where we got the money and then what is the money going to.
And I guess I'll follow up to that question. Who are your supporters? Who are your biggest financial supporters?
Right now, teachers and parents.
Teachers in the form of a union, or just teachers in forms of groups of teachers? Teachers
in forms of individuals. There's been 2 teacher forums. One was the Teachers Foundation. The Foundation of Teachers and Support Personnel, I believe, is their official title. And they supported the incumbents on the race. And then there is the other one, TSTA, and they did an interview, and they haven't come out with who they're going to support. But the support that I've received from teachers and parents and PTAs, that kind of stuff, has been really wonderful.
Okay, just to wrap this up, if you had an opportunity to talk to a voter, what would your last-minute message be?
Well, number one, please go vote for me. I have your kids' education as my number one priority. And I think that there's so much involved with what this job entails. You want someone that's going to take it seriously, do it right, because not only is it going to affect our kids' education, it's going to affect what we do as taxpayers. It affects how our house properties are looked at. It's such an important job. So I would say vote for me because I'm looking at educating the whole child.
Ms. Lasley, thank you very much.
Thank you.